Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is musician, poker player, calls himself Maverick. Maverick, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thank you.
How did you get started in poker?
Well, through the two things that you mentioned. I moved out to Los Angeles in 2002, 2003, and I didn't have a job there, and I found Commerce Casino before I started playing any music, and sat down in a 918 limit game.
That's kind of high to start.
Is it?
I mean, for many people.
Yeah, I don't. I can't. I think maybe it was the shortest list or something like that, and I had about $2,000, which.
Ooh, it's not very much.
I know. Yeah, that's.
Now, had you played poker prior to moving to LA, or like in college or something?
Home games with friends, tournament style, and we barely even knew the rules. We didn't know that the action goes around the table. We just said, "Does anybody else want to bet?" and then once everybody was done, we stopped. And I thought, these rules don't really make much sense, but we had fun playing anyway. So once I got to the casino, I learned that the action goes around in a circle, and still was able to make, I think I made like $600 the first time, and then $800 the next time. I'm like, oh my God, I found an ATM. And so I kept doing that and kind of delayed the music. And that's how I initially got into poker. Eventually moved on to playing no-limit cash games over there.
So if you told me you moved to LA, started playing 918 with $2,000, I would assume you went broke. But no, you were winning consistently?
Oh, I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was one of the luckiest people in the casino. Not only did I start winning right off the bat, when I had a bad streak 5-6 months later, I hit a bad beat jackpot my share was $12,000, and I think I was down.
That can take some of the sting off a losing streak.
I don't suggest planning on hitting a bad beat jackpot if you're going to go into professional poker, but I was down to 4.8 at that time. So things that went down from 918 to 4.8, and all of a sudden I had $12,000. I think that night I went out with my girlfriend at the time and a friend to Chateau Marmont in Hollywood. Do you know it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah. And ate with a couple friends and my girlfriend, and the meal was over $1,000. And I just didn't know how much money. $12,000 was not a lot of money. And
sounds like all the money in the world.
I know.
If you're broke.
Well, I've learned since then, $100 is a ton of money, and $100,000 is nothing at all. Depending on if you're broke or not. And funny enough, I get lucky again at Chateau Marmont. We're eating next to Cameron Diaz and one of her friends. We're the only two tables in the restaurant. And we strike up a conversation with her and her friend, and unbeknownst to my friends at the time, I told them later, but she ended up covering the bill. Okay, so now they think that I've taken them all out to this great expensive meal, and I get lucky again, and I don't even have to pay for it. So really, I just didn't know how good I was running.
So, and now at some point, did you decide, I should read a book or so, or try to learn more? I guess if you're winning, you think you're a genius already, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I just thought that if I kept going to the casino every day and doing the same thing, that I would keep winning. Especially once I got to, after that bad beat jackpot, I started playing 10-20 no limit, which is $12,000 is not even close to enough to play 10-20 no limit. But I bought in with like $1,000 every day, and I would routinely win $5,000 to $10,000. I mean,
Jesus.
So consistent. And this is like in a time where I'm limping a lot of the pots, and people just they couldn't give it away fast enough. And I thought it was always.
Now this was early 2000s. I mean, before really kind of the poker boom. So I mean, the games were extremely weak in LA back then.
Right. Yes. And like I said, I thought it was always going to be like that. It was right around the moneymaker time. like I said, I think 2002, 2003. I remember for the first few months I had to sneak into the casino because I wasn't 21.
Oh.
And I would go in, make a quick right to the bathroom, hang out in there for a while, and then just come out and hope that the security guard didn't say anything to me. Yeah. So fortunately,
What does the going to the bathroom have to do with it?
That's a good question. That's another indication that I was not entirely logical at the time.
Well, I can see where a security guard might initially, when he sees you, think, oh, he's just going to the bathroom, and then maybe he forgets about you, or he thinks you're just there to use the bathroom and that you're going to leave.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an unreasonable strategy.
Okay, good.
Or head to the restaurant, right? And if the security guard stops you, you say, oh, I'm just going to eat.
Oh, that's an idea. That's what I should have done. I just...
Oh, good. If I ever reach the,
you might get carded, Bob.
if I expect I'll get carded, I'll just head to the restroom. I think that's something to keep in mind. I haven't been carded in a while. All right, so back to your story. So you have this ATM machine in the poker rooms in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So how big did you get your bankroll?
About 100, 150. And again, oh my God, I thought I was so rich. Overspending too, especially on food. Now that I even talk about it, it's like it's painful to think about how it's an expendable, like a resource that goes away, food. So expensive meals, stuff like that. And I was doing okay for a while. I was doing well. I didn't update my skill set at all. I didn't do any advantage play stuff, nothing like that. I didn't even know that stuff was possible at the time. And then in 2005, I went to the World Series, and I found 5,100 PLO.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, which is, I didn't know how big that was at the time.
And you hadn't played PLO, or you had played it some?
That's the other part. My first ever hand of PLO was dealt to me in a 25, 50, 100
Jesus.
In the Rio with some of the rules. I think Joe Hatcham and Antonio Esfandiari were in the game or something like that. So I'm playing with these guys that are celebrities to me, and in a game I never played. But don't worry, I managed to win there too for a while. So,
Jesus.
Yeah. Because again, the players were just so bad, and I was
Joe Hashem and Antonio are not that bad.
Well, yeah. Especially since.
So, before our listeners think this is an impossible story, mm-hmm. I guess we better get to the point where you blow it all.
The reality, yeah. So, I think it was 2006. I played in a satellite, like a mega satellite for the main event. And it's three-handed. It was me and Tony Dunst. He's the host on that WPT, I think. But and the last guy, I cannot remember his name. I think David Pham, but even in my memory, it still gets foggy. Anyway, two people get a seat. The third place gets $1,600. Okay, so that's an $8,400 difference. And we made like some kind of chop for if you came in third, the other, I think David and I agreed that the other person would give you $1,000. So to take the sting out a little bit. And it's three-handed, and I have aces on the button. I raise. I'll keep the story short, so I won't include all the amounts, but I'll include the important details. I raise, Tony 3 bets, David 4 bets, and I think I jam at this point, and I am the shortest stack at the table, which will be an important detail later. And Tony is just like in the tank. Now, David is basically all in.
Both of you are all in.
Pretty much. So there's 2 seats. He has the turn. He's won a seat. There's no reason for him to put any more money in the pot that I can really conceive of.
Are these tournament chips or is it cash?
Yeah, tournament chips, yeah.
So there's really no reason for him to call.
Right, it's over. It's either David or I are going to beat each other, and the tournament's over. But he thinks and thinks and thinks, and goes all in also. And I'm thinking like, oh God. And so David also goes all in, and the three hands are aces, kings, and queens. And three-handed, that's really something. So I've got aces, Tony has queens, and the third player has kings. The board runs out, and it ends up that Tony wins the hand, busts us both. But the third player had me out-chipped by like 1% of the stack. So I didn't get the seat. And I remember berating Tony. And he and I have since talked about the hand. And he remembers it, and he says, I wasn't thinking. I just had queens, and I'm not folding. That's as much as I thought about it.
Wow.
And so that, for some reason, just like the uniqueness of the situation just tilted me out of my mind. I should have gone back home to L.A. and spent some more money on $1,000 dinners. But instead I stayed and grinded almost all of it down to basically broke. I mean, 10,000, 15,000, I would call that broke. So, and then I went back home to Cleveland to retool for a while. So yeah, that's the good luck didn't last forever.
Wow.
All right. So, did you ever get back to poker? And
No, that's the end of his story, and
Yeah.
and the end of our
were
show.
your skills better and when you came back?
So I don't think my skills were better. I'll just let you know that right off the bat. But I eventually...
If you got a horseshoe up your ass, why do you need skills?
Yeah, I know. No kidding. I never should have learned how to play better. Went to an American Idol tryout in Louisville, Kentucky. And again, same story. I went to do music, and there was a casino down the road, more or less down the road. And I had a few $1,000s to my name at that point, and I took out $500 and played 2-5 no limit at it's the boat over there. Do you know what it's called? Maybe Hammond. It's in Indiana.
Hammond. I thought Hammond was up
Maybe
further away.
Yeah, it's close to Gary, Indiana.
Okay, so there's another place that's
Yeah,
closer
is
to
it Blue something was I can't remember.
I don't even remember the name. And of course, just like all terrible gambling stories, I start with winning a ton of money. Nobody stays in gambling if they lose right off the bat, right? So I won.
Well, Richard found a way to do that.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Oh yeah. I lost for 160 hours when I first started and quit. And a friend convinced me to. I was counting cards,
Okay.
and a friend convinced me to give it another shot.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like 3 months later, and so I went back and gave it another shot and started winning. And yeah,
Well, that's probably how you know you're good. If you start off losing and then you still end up being a profitable gambler, then you must be doing something right.
well, actually, for you to have lost like 150K, I mean. I think it's almost worse to have experienced these big wins and have a sizable bankroll and then go broke.
It's tough to go back and play. If I hadn't changed scenery, if I had to go back to Commerce and play like 1-3 or something when I'd been playing 10-20 no limit, 20-40 no limit and stuff like that, I don't know if I could have done it. Yeah, because it messes with your mind. But yeah, so I went to try out for American Idol, won $5,000 playing 2-5 no limit, which is not usual. And I said, I did go to the American Idol tryout, and I did not get through. But I said, you know what, I got to give this poker thing another shot. I think, there's something here. So months later, I drove across the country with about $5,000 in my pocket to Las Vegas. And this is about 2010, I think, 2010 or 2011. But yeah, just on a whim, drove across the country, got a month-to-month lease from my ex-girlfriend's parents. And I lived in their grandparents' former house. It's funny, they had an obsession with clowns, and the whole house had pictures of clowns, like every wall. There, you couldn't walk 2 feet without seeing a picture.
Sounds like a horror movie.
It did. It was something like that. But yeah, and then I started grinding it out in Vegas again. I almost went broke again. because I was playing the same way that I did in 2003, 2004, 2005, which wasn't going to work anymore because Black Friday had just happened and the players were a lot tougher.
So when did you decide to try to learn something about the game?
That's the important question, right? I had run this 5,000 down to like 1,000, and I'm thinking like, this is my last night, and I said, screw it, I'm gonna play. I had always had this mindset of I'm gonna play super aggressive. I'm not gonna follow the conventional rules at all. And I started playing super aggressive and won like a few $1,000s that day. And then I worked out a lot of the math on my own at home. I have not a big background in programming, but a slight, I'm competent. But and I started going through some of the numbers on there and figured out that what I'm doing might be right. And so I stuck with that and kept improving and, did well.
Still didn't read a book.
I don't think I've ever read a poker book that was not like a bio.
Really?
Yeah.
And did you have... I mean, the other way to get good is to surround yourself with players that are better than you are and talk about it.
Right.
Did you have friends who were good players that were like, hey, you should not be doing this or that? I mean, that kind of stuff?
At that point, not yet. Once I got up to about 5'10", no limit, and had, again, not enough money, but like $40,000, $50,000, I started talking more with like friends in the poker community and stuff like that. But I came out here by myself, had no friends, didn't talk to anybody. I just went and played poker 16 hours a day and thought about it and kind of did my own math work at home. So it was not until much later that I started talking to people about it.
Wow.
We have lots more questions to ask, Maverick, but a change in subject because it's one that I want to get in and I want to make sure we had time for it. It's right now you are balancing gambling and family life.
Mm-hmm. What
issues does that bring up? We don't talk a whole lot about that on the air.
Well, how much time do you have?
6 minutes and 32 seconds.
Well, one of the best things about poker is you make your own schedule, right? Gambling in general. But when you have a child who wakes up at the beginning at all hours of the night, you can't do that anymore. And so the opportunities are drying up in Vegas, and also you will sit at the poker table for like 24 to 36 hours, and all of your money will be made in 30 to 60 minutes, when a big spot comes in. And I wasn't able to do that as much anymore. So to me, I think family and kids and that is by far the most important thing in my life. But you're not able to sit at the poker table for hours on end anymore, and you got to... Also, in the back of your mind, I don't think it's affected me too much, but in the back of your mind is, if I lose and I keep losing and I keep I got somebody else depending on me now. I don't really have the option to go broke anymore. It changes your bankroll management. That's for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I was on the road constantly, and once I had kids, I just was not willing to travel for as far or as long as I was before. Mm-hmm. And, I remember when I interviewed Chip Reese, he said, like, if he missed his kid's soccer game, he felt like a bad dad. And that really resonated with me. I was the same way. It's like when my kids were playing soccer or I had one son who was into basketball, I wanted to be there for those games. I did not want to be in
Korea.
Iowa in the middle of winter, or let alone Russia or something like that. Yeah,
well, especially not now. But it depends what part of Russia.
Yeah, well, it was bad then, but it's worse now. Yeah.
The moments you have with your kids are value beyond measure. So
how did you balance that?
Start playing smaller, start playing online. Well, those two things kind of go together. I mean, once you play online, the games are a lot tougher, so you got to play smaller. Start doing stuff besides poker. So one of the first things I got into was sports betting. And like I said, I have some programming ability, and I did a lot of work on basketball and some on baseball and football too. Really got really in depth into those, and you can do that at home, and you can usually sports bet from home until you get cut off or you get stiffed. But yeah, so I got more into those kind of things.
And are you still betting sports as well?
Not currently. I had too many issues with getting stiffed, mostly. I mean, that's...
If you're betting offshore, you have that problem, or with paper head accounts.
Right.
Yeah, I experienced that as well. But, living here, you can...
Yeah, there are still some spots here. I mean, some of the casinos will be a little more or less fair, depending on which... I won't name names of casinos, but some will... basically like roll the timer on your bet.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've talked about this.
Okay.
If you're betting in game and then they only approve the bets where it goes against you.
Right. And that was one of my biggest spots, and they started doing that to me, and you start getting crushed because you're not getting the bet that you want. Either that or it'll be like a small market bet. Most of the money is made, in my opinion, in these small market, like second half or the third quarter total, weird stuff like props. And especially those where they won't take high limits, they'll roll you, then they refuse your bet and they move the line based on your information. So sometimes you're just giving the books information and not getting down, and it's just a mess. It's a real mess. But yeah, still, I've thought about transitioning to helping sports teams, like use better game theory. I know that's starting to become a thing. I know the Ravens hired an analytics guy.
Oh, a number of teams have done that, yeah. In both basketball and baseball, and actually football too, yeah.
Because they're making some really, really simple mistakes, and there just seems like a lot of opportunity there for them to improve, to add significant value, if they want to win, which I'm not sure all teams do. But yes, they're making a lot of mistakes.
And do you have a resume where you are hireable as an analytic guy by, having somebody who went broke several times playing poker may not be the...
Well, but look at Vulgaris. I don't know what his resume is other than successful sports bettor.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's got a PhD in stats or something that I don't know about, but...
I don't think he does his own programming or anything. I think he hires people. But he certainly seems competent. And sometimes it's better to be clever than just brute force smart. And I think what he recognized were a couple spots where you didn't need as much of the math and brute force smarts to do it. But yeah. How do you put it on a resume? I know how to program and do sports statistics and give you analytical advice because I went broke 3 times playing poker. It's not a great pitch. No. Fortunately, I filed taxes. I guess I can show them those. Yeah.
So, you're still playing poker today. Do you, can you get cheated in Las Vegas poker rooms? Is everything on the square?
Of course, everything is not on the square. I would say it's not. I think it's unlikely that it's common, but there are many ways that people can get cheated, even in Vegas. They think they're safe because they're in like a Vegas casino with a lot of oversight. People are still getting cheated, for sure. Yeah,
this has been poker's dirty little secret for forever,
right.
Basically.
Right.
That, especially, when high rollers show up, I think there are poker players who think, well, the guy's going to lose his money anyway. We'll just make it happen faster, or make sure I get it instead of somebody else, or whatever.
Right.
So you, I still am kind of flabbergasted by your story, but you eventually became a regular in the big game at
Was in the big no limit games in Bellagio, yeah, and then I would play the Bobby's Room game when it was small enough for me to play. So like, I didn't reg 4,000, 8,000 limit, but when they played 400, 800 limit, then I would play, and yeah, so I played at Bellagio almost every single day. And probably the missing part of the story is how did I get the money back again to play in those games, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, okay, so this is the I'll call this my third or fourth bad beat jackpot, metaphorically. Playing in Vegas for a while, grinding, and there has been a well-known person who has played in this kind of 10-20 no-limit stakes who has a propensity to lose a massive amount of money in proportion to those stakes, meaning like a regular swing in a 10-20 no-limit game is $5,000 to $10,000, and this person would routinely lose $500,000 to $1 million. So
Jesus.
So absurd amounts. And he had a credit line with the casino, and he would go out and get chips and come back, and the casino probably didn't like that he was losing their money at the poker table, but yeah, he would do that too. So anyway, I'm sleeping in bed one night on a mattress in the floor, I should say. When I lived by myself here, I had 3 or 4 possessions: a TV, a folding chair, a mattress, and a computer. And that is it. My house is empty other than that. So, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and I get a call from a friend's girlfriend who worked at Mandalay. And she said, I'll have to give him a pseudonym or whatever. I think Brown used Omar. We'll call him Omar. She's like, Omar is playing here at Mandalay. Like and he at this point he was well known to lose a ton of money in these games. They're playing 2-5 no limit. He's losing like a few thousand every night. Like, you got to come down here and talk to him. So I come down to Mandalay at like 4 a.m. or something, and he takes a smoke break. I go talk to him, and I'm like, "Oh, do you ever play bigger?" I mean, I'm basically kind of like putting on a show, but he's like, "Yeah, I play bigger. How much do you want to put on the table?" He's like, "You want to put 50,000 on the table right now?" And I'm like, "Not really," but I say, "Yes, sure." And he says, "Well, I'm busy today, with this stuff." But he gave me his number. He said, I'll let you know when I come back. He did not let me know when he came back. So then I hear again he's playing at Bellagio, just in the regular game, and the same girl told me again that he was playing, and I went down there with a friend. The friend didn't want to go. He's like, "We'll never get in. They're going to have him surrounded. It's private." And 2 tables broke as we walked in the room. You talk about being lucky in life. 2 tables break as we walk in the room, and somehow my friend and I both get in this game with this Omar. At this point, I've got like 60, 70,000 to my name, and he's playing crazy. He's 10, 20 blinds. He's raising to 1,000 in the dark. This is like a dream spot. And so of course,
not a dream if you only have 60,000 to your name.
Well, yeah, and I think, well, maybe because it's gone well for me, but I think shot taking is underrated, especially in a spot like this. You can buy in for less. You could buy in for 4,000 or something, and of course I didn't. I lost about 50,000 pretty steadily over the night, and I'm thinking, oh my, like, how do I lose in this spot? How does this happen to me? I plunked my last $10,000 out on the table, and at this point, this Omar is pissed, and he's just jamming in the dark, and he's got me covered. He's got me well covered. So he jams, and I've got like 10 or 12,000 on the table. I look down at ace 8, and I'm thinking like, I'm going to have to move back home. I'm going to have to tell my parents this didn't work out. I've got to give up everything here. I can't believe it. And I'm like, just screw it. I get it in. I win the hand. man, that was one of the...
Ace 8
Yeah.
seems like
It's light,
for your
right?
case money to go.
It's ridiculous. It's a terrible decision, and I don't suggest anyone do it.
Better than 2-7.
Yeah, right. You know what? I cannot remember what hand he had. You would think that's something I would remember. But I win the hand. I go on to break even in the night. He says, let's all play tomorrow. He doesn't tell us a time, so we got to stay up all night and play tomorrow. And he demands everybody buy in $10,000. I'm like, oh, God. And so, okay, here we go again. And this day, he started with about 50. He took him a few hours, but then he went off and he goes to the pit to play blackjack or something. And we're like, he's not coming back. He comes back with $1 million in cranberries. Yeah. And just plops them on the table. And long story short, I won about 150 that day.
Jesus.
Yeah, this was 2012, I think. I went and bought a bed. That was one of the first things.
Well,
And-
you're talking about your extravagant lifestyle. It's
Right.
like, you couldn't
There's
just...
just no end to the expenses.
I know. Well, I overcompensated I said I'm never going to go broke overspending again. And so I've been pretty frugal since, but yeah.
Was this a bed from IKEA and you had to put it up yourself?
I think somebody brought it over. It was, and I didn't even test it beforehand. It was too soft. They had to bring a new one. I don't know. I should have just stuck with the mattress on the floor. I was more comfortable there. But yeah, so then after that, I started being a regular in the Bellagio games and did pretty well from there. But still, most of my big wins in poker were on nights where somebody just lost their mind, like playing heads up against me. And
Now, were these usually other regulars in the game, or somebody would wander in off the street and?
it would depend. And I don't mind naming his name because I think he's kind of sorted himself out since, and I think he was a nice guy. He just had some issues with gambling. But Brad Booth, I don't know if you know Yukon. He was one of the regs on the high stakes cash game on that Game Show Network or whatever it was.
Regs means regulars?
Yeah, he was a regular on the game. Yeah, sorry. And one night he went off for 50 to 100,000, and we were playing heads up, and he's talking pretty morbidly about his life. I'll just say that. And I told him, you know, we don't have to keep playing. Like I'm printing money here because he's not having a good time. Nice guy again. And I think he's okay since, and I can't keep doing it, you know, because he's having such it was just kind of a tough spot, but
Hard to be a nice guy in the poker world.
well, I've learned that since, yeah.
I mean, there are other guys who would, drive across the country to, if they heard that he was in that spot, they would go
Right.
drive across the country to get to him. And it's really, I played backgammon
Okay.
professionally for quite a long time, and that was part of why I gave it up. Was it just felt distasteful to kind of take advantage of somebody who is sick.
Right.
And, the other reason is because there were a lot of assholes in backgammon. And, so just the personalities, between the personalities and my feeling, like, I love nothing more than squeezing every dollar out of a casino, but
Right.
squeezing it out of a guy who's got a gambling problem, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a casino, it's once removed. I mean, the casino has their money because guys with
Right,
gambling problems
right.
have given it to them.
Yeah.
And now you're taking from the casino, so it's...
It's a good point. I didn't think about the once removed factor. Now I'm going to have to think about that too. I'm getting the money from the casino because they beat people with gambling problems.
How did you also shifted over into other forms of advantage play? How did that happen?
So in 2011, I think, I met, she goes by Brown, and I had known that advantage play stuff was a thing. I vaguely knew that people were able to see hole cards. I didn't know how that worked. I actually saw the funny thing is I saw my first hole card, I don't know, in 2010, and I thought I felt bad. I think most people have that instinct, like I'm not supposed to look, or like this is against the rules or something. And so I didn't really think much of it then, but then later I started getting more and more into the AP stuff. Like I said, through Brown and some of her friends, and got into hole carding and other advanced techniques, precision cutting. There are so many ways to beat the house. They're making so many mistakes, and and so that was fairly profitable too.
Did you get into slots as well?
Yeah, I did some slot stuff. There was one move that we were doing for a while that kind of dried up. It's kind of a weird thing because you're either looking for like high bonuses, when the jackpot becomes profitable by 1%, really tiny edges, or you're doing it through getting rebates and stuff like that through the casino where you have to kind of count on them to make mistakes. So I did do slots. It wasn't my favorite thing, but yeah.
To me, I'm like, kill me now if that's what I had to do to make a living.
Right.
I hated playing slots.
Right. And when I was taking breaks from poker and trolling up and down slot aisles, I was just like, oh, I got to do something else.
So were you a part of teams when you were doing this hole carding or ace sequencing or whatever else you were doing? Or were you doing it solo?
It would depend. Mostly teams. I would occasionally do stuff on my own, but everybody kind of shared information too. And so, like in one spot, I found I call it like I told you, a cesspool, where just like everyone in the casino is making mistakes. All the dealers are making mistakes, and they're on a when the dealers rotate with a
rubber. So it's called a rubber band.
Yes.
And the reason is you have this list of dealers on a pad, and you have a rubber band that tells you what dealer is due to go on a break next. So as the dealers come back from a break, you take the name under the rubber band and then move the rubber band down one name, and that's how you send the dealers to what table they're going to go to. So they're always going somewhere else.
Mm. That's
and it's not always, if it's always blackjack, it's no big deal. But if it's 10 or 20 different games, they have to.
Exactly. Because
plenty of
now
chances
some of
to
these
make
casinos
mistakes.
do have 20 different games, and the bosses don't even know what the rules are of a lot of these games. And
yeah, if you're supposed to push on a dealer 22 and he forgets that can make a big difference.
That can be helpful. Yeah.
Right. Some people can't read the poker board, or some dealers can't read the poker boards. I know some guys were basically talking dealers into paying them out because the dealer couldn't read the board. You'd be surprised what you can get away with if you're confident enough.
Yeah, and the other thing is, even without talking them into it, I mean, there are places where you can have an edge just playing basic strategy because the dealers will make enough mistakes to give you an advantage. Just sitting there.
Yes, for sure.
And the more games they have, the better it is.
Right. But yeah, and going back to being confident enough to do something, one of the first things and I don't know if you can talk about this too, one of the first things I had an issue with was sitting doing AP stuff thinking they know what I'm doing. They're on to me. Like the pit bosses, because you're usually going to be the person betting the biggest amount in the pit. And the pit boss is standing right next to you, staring at you, and you just have to somehow fade that feeling of they're looking at me. They know what
Absolutely.
I'm doing.
Yeah. And every time the phone rings, you think they're
Right.
calling about you. And
Right.
every time they speak to somebody else, it must be about you. Yeah, I think everybody has experienced that. And yeah, you just have to steel yourself against it. And,
Yeah.
I remember playing a carnival game with a group of people, and acting like we don't know each other. And there was a couple who was taking off the money, and they won a lot of money. And and the next day we were back, and the shift manager came and told them that they couldn't play that game anymore. And the guy said, "Did we do something wrong?" And he said, "No." He said, "This game is just new, and we don't really understand it yet." And so they closed the game, and basically the game never opened again. They took it out.
Right.
So
there's a lot of the times they don't know what you're doing. I was doing a team thing with 4 people who were kind of fresh to it in a casino in Mesquite, and it's very difficult to work with new people on their first time because, like I said, they get that oh my God, people are looking at me, and then they start making mistakes. And long story, but eventually we're in like the middle of a hand, and the pit boss comes out and he says, "Everyone stop the hand." I mean, like really loud in a kind of small casino. And he points to me. He says, "You guys can keep playing, but you," and he points at me, "have to play over there." And I'm thinking, wow, like I've never encountered this before.
And did he have you guys as being together, or did he, or?
I think he picked off Brown and me.
Like signaling to each other or something?
Well, just that he knew something was going on. Like, I don't know if he picked up signaling, but just that we were both kind of known, I think, at that point. We were in some kind of OSN or something like that.
That's so weird that he wouldn't bar you. He just tells you to play at a different table.
Yeah. And what you got to think, like, so if you're just like a regular player doing nothing wrong, what would you do in that spot? Say this is your first time you ever played in a casino, and the pit boss says, "You can't play, you have to play over there, but you can keep playing here." And that's what I try to think when I'm responding to these kind of things with these guys. But I was like, okay, I'll go play over there. And so I played a few hands over there. I should have just left, looking back on it, because it's not like any customer is not going to stand for somebody talking to him like that.
I don't know. I think a lot of people do get intimidated, and they're, and would be like, oh, I mean, if they've gambled a lot, they might get belligerent, but if they haven't gambled a lot, I think a lot of people would be like, I don't get it, but okay,
right.
Just
that was one of the weirdest backoffs I got.
That is weird.
And
that is weird.
Weird thing is later I saw my flyer, and they thought that we were hole carding, which we were not doing. I mean, if somebody could have hole carded that game, they were God, but
they don't know.
Right.
It used to be back in the old days, like anytime they didn't understand what was going on, they said you were shuffle tracking.
Oh.
Like it didn't matter what you were doing. That was their, go-to if they didn't understand it.
That's interesting.
But, one of my favorite stories is when you're talking about people thinking that they're always looking at you and know what you're doing. There was a guy who was on Tommy Highland's team and back in Atlantic City, and he was a new player, and he had never been to Vegas, and he had heard all these stories. This is back in like 1980 or whatever, when, he'd heard all these stories about getting dragged in the back room and beaten up, and the guy was really paranoid. And he plays in the sands. He plays for just a very short time, and he's got all these chips, and he gets up from the table, and he's going to go to the bathroom to count his chips, and he sees a security guard looking at him, and so he ducks into some slot machines, and he keeps looking back at the security guard, and he is going through the maze, and he runs into the bathroom, he runs into a stall, he sits down and starts counting his chips. And all of a sudden, these 2 hands come over the door of the stall, and the security guard looks over the top and says, "What are you doing?" And the guy says, "I'm just counting my chips." And the security guard says, "In the woman's bathroom?"
That's pretty good.
Yes.
That is pretty good.
Well, since we have a good one, this is a good time to break. We'll be right back after commercial messages. The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more such games than anyone else has. The May promotion is half price gas and goods. For every $8,334 you earn and redeem in May, normally worth $25 in cash, free play, or spending at various hotel and casino outlets, you'll receive a $50 Walmart or Chevron gift cards. You may earn up to 10 of these in May in any combination. Note, you do not keep your points when you redeem them for the gift cards. Still, assuming you value the gift cards at face value, it's effectively a 0.6% slot club for the first $83,000 you play in May. On Sunday, May 8th, Mother's Day, earn 300 points between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., and you can pick up a free tin of See's candy, which goes for $27 retail. On this promotion, you keep your points, and these points count towards the earning Chevron and Walmart cards. On Monday, May 30th, 8 a.m. to midnight, there's a $32,000 hot seat promotion where every 3 minutes, one lucky player receives $100 in free play. If you haven't finished earning your $10 gift cards, playing on this day is a form of double dipping.
Hey guys, this is Colin from blackjackapprenticeship.com, and if you're serious about card counting, I'd encourage you to check out the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. It has the training tools you'll need to beat the game, like our comprehensive video course and our training suite, so you can learn each skill and virtually test yourself before ever stepping foot in a casino. It also includes the tools you'll need to succeed, like our pro betting software, casino database, results tracking software, and access to a community of like-minded Advantage players to network with in our members forum and chat room software. You can find out more at blackjackapprenticeship.com.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Magic Deal Poker. This is a 10 coins per line game where periodically, prior to the deal, you receive 1, 2, or very occasionally 3 Magic Deal cards. These are like wild cards, except they are determined after the other cards are dealt, and they must take the value of a real card, which means you cannot have 5 of a kind on games like Double Double Bonus. The frequency of the Magic Deal cards depends on the game. On games where 2 pair receives even money, you get relatively few Magic Deal cards because 4 of a kinds pay a lot in these games. On games where 2 pair pays double money, which is primarily jacks or better or bonus poker, you'll get significantly more Magic Deal cards because 4 of a kinds pay relatively little in these games. All right, we're back talking to Maverick. Now, although I don't think you're going to beat Richard's back-off story, have you had any interesting back-offs that you can tell us about?
I would say the most interesting thing about most of them has been that how nice people are. First of all, yeah.
Like everything about your story is
lucky?
The opposite. Yeah, lucky, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I think I would have rather
This guy doesn't know how to get beat up.
I know. I think I would have rather taken a few shots to the face and a...
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, everybody I know that's happened to, like, at the end of the day, even when they get big 6-figure settlements, at the end of the day, they're like, it wasn't worth it. Because
really?
Takes years. And, if you don't live here, you got to fly back here. And, everyone, I don't know, I can't think of one who wouldn't have had it not happen.
That is really surprising.
And sometimes when you get beat up, you never totally heal. And there's always, you have these migraine headaches for the rest of your life. And yes, you have you have $100,000 to get over it, but you really want the migraine headaches regularly for the rest of your life?
Right. You always got to think you're looking over your shoulder. You're worried that people aren't going to follow the law, and you got to worry about things for the rest of your life too. Probably.
All right. So, how did you nicely get backed off?
Oh, which time? Well, I can say we were playing at South Point consistently for a while. Who are...
Since they're sponsors, I hope this is a nice back-off.
They were very polite, and they were very generous with the comps, and I will say that Michael's is, I think, the best restaurant in Vegas. And I highly recommend... I cannot remember what it was, but a dessert. It was like a banana torte dessert. Anyway, I love that place. But yeah, we were playing there for a long time, and not changing look or anything, and they knew something was going on, but they couldn't figure it out. It's funny when that happens. And so after they took a lot of action. But after a year plus, one of the pit bosses, who I was kind of on a first name basis with, we didn't lie to him or anything. He said, we no longer want your action in blackjack. And of course, what did I do? But he's like, well, that's just how we feel about it, and you're welcome to. I think they were still okay with me playing carnival games and stuff and betting sports there and being there, but they said that we don't want your action anymore. And I actually still would love to go back to the guy and tell him what we were doing. But I don't want to
do that.
I know I don't want to give the move up, but man, it's difficult to.
But I have to say, once you stop counting cards, back-offs, in my experience, are much better. I mean, because often they really don't know. Like, for the last, 20 years or something, any back-offs I've had are either for somebody recognizes me or we just want too much money.
Right.
And they usually are not, in my experience, they're not nasty at all because they don't know what to be nasty about.
Right.
Yeah.
Mostly they're just the messengers too.
Yeah.
The most of the analyzing is going on in the surveillance, but
and sometimes they're actually apologetic.
Right.
I've had that happen
Right.
where they apologize for backing us off. And like I had one shift manager say, like, I don't agree with this decision. This was not up to me.
Wow,
if it were up to me, I would let you keep playing. But,
wow.
They told me I have to tell you can't play anymore.
That's really strong.
Yeah. My very nicest back off, though, was in Seoul, Korea, where they said, excuse me, the casino manager would like to talk to you. And they take me into this back room, and I'm thinking, oh, no, back room. And there's, like, couches, and the guy is there, and he's like, have a seat. And they come in with tea, and we're drinking tea, and he's talking about, like, nothing. This goes on for, like, 5 minutes. We're just having tea and chatting. And then at the end of, like, 5 minutes, he's like, I am so sorry, but you cannot play here anymore. You know?
It must be a cultural disconnect or something. It's just a different way of doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the nicest back off I ever had.
I'm always impressed about how quietly they can come up on you, too. I mean, usually, you've signals for, like, hey, somebody's behind you, or somebody's coming. But, like, when I've been playing by myself, I remember one place I was... And I'm about 6'1", big guy, so hole carding can be tough. And I'm slinked like way back in my chair, drinking a beer, and all of a sudden I get a little tap on the shoulder. You say, "Excuse me," and he calls me by name, and he says, "We don't want you to play blackjack here anymore." I'm like, the first thing I was, where the heck did you come from?
He's like ninja, ninja boss.
Yeah, but if you have hole carding skills, there must be other games in that casino you can hole card without, other than blackjack.
Yes, and they just don't know. They don't know what's going on, and they're scared, and they just figure.
But you definitely have to put some time in between, right? Because if you go from blackjack and start winning a lot of money right away on a carnival game, they're going to take a much closer look at that game and try to figure out. You know, what is he doing? So.
Could be, and sometimes I'll try to put in cover play around the other stuff that we're doing. Like we played craps for a while, and I don't know how to dice set or if that's a thing or what's going on with that. But the funny thing is that we would win on the cover play like all the time, and I'm thinking this doesn't look like cover play. They probably think we're doing something else. But yeah. One Atlantic City back off too, where now they can't really back you off in Jersey, right?
They're not supposed to be able to, but
so they came up and asked for ID, and I said, I just got it, I don't have ID, and this was like 8 security guards, and I don't know if you've ever seen Usual Suspects. Have you seen it? Where they pick Kevin Pollak up at the beginning, and he's just by himself in the grave. He's like, "You think you brought enough guys?" And I've been waiting to use this line, and I say, "Do you think you brought enough guys?" There's like 6 or 7 guys, and he goes, "Well, can I have your name?" And I gave him my first name. He said, "What's your last name?" I said, "What's your last name?" And he's like, "Okay, man, just." And then they were going to limit the bet. What's what they do there? They limit you to $10 a hand or something. And so I just left. But way better than giving up, information, not being able to play in Atlantic City anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've all been pretty friendly.
Yeah, it's been my experience in video poker, although sometimes I get backed off because my pictures are on the machine, and so they kind of knew me that way. But that might not have been what you were doing. All right, so we have a little bit of time left. Do you have any interesting stories with AP teammates that are a little bit unusual?
Of course, yes. Which to tell? I would say one time we had a great game at a place on the Strip where we could bet a lot, and I found a big player to work with, basically, and it was his first time on the game, and he had issue with that everybody's looking at me feeling, or I'm doing weird stuff. He didn't expect that he's going to surrender 12 and weird stuff like that, and he would miss the signals. He wouldn't do it, and then he started getting really nervous. He went to the bathroom later, on a dealer push, and the pit boss comes up to me and he says, is he on drugs or something? Yeah. He's like, he looks like he's on drugs. Are you with him? I'm like, no, I don't know that guy. But anyway, the game it was such a good spot, and the game got torched. And
some people just can't handle betting the money.
Yeah.
I had a friend who, if he had to bet $500, literally his hands would shake.
Yeah.
And he just, he couldn't do it.
And doing some of the plays where they look weird, I had an issue getting over that, and I just said, you know what, I'm sick of giving away money. I mean, when you stay on a 17 versus when the dealer has a 20 or something, I'm just like, you know what, I'm just not doing this anymore. And I'm
wait, you're not standing on 17 versus 20?
I've surrendered on 17.
Oh, surrender.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
But you're not hitting it.
I did not. I've never hit a 17. Well,
17 against an 8 actually is a big game. If you hit 17 against a known 18.
Oh, God.
That's a 25% play, right? So, but I mean, really, I only do it if it's a 3 or 4 card 17, and more like in handheld games where they don't see, that you have 17 when you hit it.
Right. Or if you have a string of 6 cards and you can say, "Oh, I thought it was 16."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, 3 or 4 card 17 would make it harder to be successful because you've already have the.
That's true, but it's better cover,
But
and
you could just pretend you miscounted.
And if you hit the 5, you tuck your hand like you've made 21, and then you have the perfect. If they say you have 22, you can say, "Oh, I thought I had 16." Right.
Right.
But you can't. There's
some stuff
you don't
want
to ruin the game by playing it too strong.
Right. Yeah. It depends what you can get away with at different times. But yeah, mostly teammates are. You worry about. Everybody's got their strengths and their weaknesses. Some people are better in really crowded nights, and I brought somebody in on a game in a really kind of small casino, and the game was so good. And the person didn't get as much information as I was getting when I was reading the card, and then kind of got heat and ruined the game. Those kind of things are difficult, But everybody's got their different strengths, and that person was very good at some other things. So you kind of bear with those. But
you got to put people in the right role.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Mostly testing people out as big players that can't handle it is a big mistake, which you figure out pretty quickly. That and the dynamics of loaning money and trusting people with money, it can be.
Well, yeah, there's that, and the problems of skimming, which
I don't really see much of a way to get around that. We've had stories where somebody had $15K and he said he got mugged, and we're like, does this come out of the team, or what the heck do we do here? So stuff like that, but nothing too bad.
Thank you, Maverick, for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure.
All right, at the end of our show, we have a recommended section, except when we forget it. So, Richard, do you have a recommended for our audience today?
Yeah, my this is a weird one, different than my normal recommendations.
Mine is weirder. I'll have a weirder contest with you.
Okay, well, mine is just somebody to follow on Instagram. So on Instagram, I mostly follow photographers and like storytelling people. But this guy, the handle is Vegas Issues. And anybody who spent any amount of time in Vegas, you drive around, you see some weird stuff. And that's what this guy posts. He posts the weirdest things going on, guy in his underwear, panhandling, dancing, Elvis fighting with a guy dressed up like Spider-Man down on Fremont Street, just weird stuff like that. And
That's not so weird for Fremont Street.
No, it's not, but it's fun to see it once in a while on Instagram too. I follow his feed, and I always like to see what he posts because it, makes me smile. So Vegas Issues, it's called. And
Vegas Issues. I'll check it out
we'll put
too.
a link in the show notes.
My recommended is a strategy that I'm applying today. Maybe I'll talk about in a few weeks whether or not it worked. After we tape this show, my wife and I are getting COVID boosters. The new set. We're both well into seniorhood. And so she sometimes has a really sore arm after it. So what I have heard is if you exercise your shoulder and get the blood moving in that area, it really helps disseminate the vaccine through the shoulder. And so last time I got the booster, it was right after I went and worked out at the gym, and I had no pain whatsoever. So right now we're both working that shoulder muscle. And so telling him it's got to be in the right shoulder because that's the one I worked. And we're hoping it gets through with no downside whatsoever.
Well, you can let us know if it worked.
And if I don't show up next week, it probably didn't work.
Do you have a suggested exercise? A specific exercise?
Well, shoulder, you can, lift it up.
Yeah.
You can lift it to the side, or you can raise it, just raise it from your arm down by your leg. And
shoulder rolls.
Yeah, so anything to get general blood going into the shoulder area, because that's where they give it. And it doesn't have to be heavy weights. It just needs to be enough to get the blood going. So I've heard. And so we shall see. So, Maverick, do you have a recommended for our audience today?
I'm between several things, but on the topic of working with teammates and communicating with teammates, I would say if you're talking with someone with whom you have a disagreement, state, and the person tells you what their issue is, restate their position to them as you heard it until they're satisfied with your interpretation of it before you do anything else in the argument. So that's my recommendation.
To make it, To make it clear that you understand what the issue is that you're actually discussing. Yeah, that's good, because often, arguments are not really being argued about the issue that the argument is about.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Almost never is it about the issue that's being argued about, I found. But so I guess active listening or something, I think it's called.
That's a good recommendation. All right. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Maverick. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.